if everybody completely rationally embraced this thing, Bitcoin would cost you $3 million a coin, and you would lose, the next 20x opportunity for you. So you almost don't want them to figure it out too fast, because otherwise you're the stupid money. I'd rather be the smart money and wait for the stupid money to learn over the course of 5 to 10 years, because we need someone to be buying this stuff when it hits $5 million a coin, Anthony.
The biggest news of the day is that MicroStrategy has borrowed $205 million to buy more Bitcoin, as CEO Michael Saylor remains committed to the cryptocurrency. Bitcoin enthusiast Saylor in August 2020 converted virtually all of MicroStrategy's cash into Bitcoin. He has repeatedly said that his company will continue to add Bitcoin to its stockpile and has called the digital currency likely the only scarcity in the world. Hello and welcome to Money Talks. In today's video, the biggest Bitcoin supporter, billionaire and CEO of MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, updates about cryptocurrency regulations, pro-crypto senators, Biden's executive order, and Bitcoin's increasing institutional adoption. Make sure to stick around till the end of this video if you want to know why Michael Saylor thinks that $100 trillion will flow into Bitcoin space. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the post notifications. Let's dive right into the video.
In fact, there's no controversy. The majority of Congress likes what's happening. The majority of the Senate is supportive of Bitcoin. The majority of regulators in the White House are in support of Bitcoin. The majority of regulators everywhere in the world are supportive of Bitcoin. And if what you want to do is use it as digital property, there's not even any controversy. But you have to dig for the controversy. And if you push hard enough, like they won't let me transfer it secretly without paying taxes on it, and I'm really angry about that, you can find some controversy. But in fact, this is such an obvious innovation in the economy that if people got away from the trollish fixation on finding someone to disagree with a hyperbolic statement I will make, they would realize that there's $100 trillion of money that needs to flow into this economy, and it's not there yet. And everybody is loudly endorsing it. If you're listening, we're still in the stage of adoption where there is friction and there's prejudice and there is fear, right? There is. So I think we can all agree that there's still that, but the indicia. Right, the indicia of institutional adoption and the likelihood that the institution and the establishment embrace this has never been clearer than it is today. Let's say it's going to be a 36-month, 24-month, 36-month, 48-month delay before banks catch up, but smaller banks are offering Bitcoin services. The larger banks, not yet, but Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, there are parts of those banks that are very reactionary and they push back. And on the other hand, another part of Morgan Stanley ends up owning $500 million worth of my stock, right? At the same time that the part of Morgan Stanley doesn't want anybody to buy your fund. And so these are not monolithic conglomerates, right? These tend to be massive organizations with 100 different divisions, each of them making independent decisions. And you got to figure
they're economically
month by month, we win over a new individual, a new leader, a new executive division every month. And that'll continue for the decade, I guess, from 2022 to 2030, I think. That's how long it takes for a lot of these major financial institutions to rewire their thinking and their plumbing and their risk controls. I think the sovereign wealth funds will come first. I mean, the first adoption will be any sovereign wealth fund like UAE or Saudi Arabia or Norway or Switzerland that would hold big tech stocks. If you would hold $10 billion worth of Apple or Google or Facebook or Amazon, I think some of those will roll into Bitcoin because it's just another tech investment for them, and it's totally within their mandate. I think that I think that some countries are being forced to consider other payment options. I mean, like the Russians are being forced. If you get kicked off of SWIFT, that drives and catalyzes something. And then I think, I think it'll be a while, but we're really waiting for a small, mid-sized company that has its own currency to print its currency and buy Bitcoin. I don't think it's a this year thing or a next year thing, but at some point somebody will figure it out. If you're selling $50 billion worth of commodities or exports every year, and you're using the dollar as your treasury reserve asset, you're propping up $100 trillion currency that's inflating at 10, 15, 20% a year. So that's just shipping. That's in essence shipping all of your treasury to the dollar over the course of a decade. If you switch that and you started buying CNY, you'd be propping up the Chinese currency. Instead of propping up $100 trillion currency, you'd be propping up a $20 or $30 trillion currency, and that's to the benefit of the Chinese. If you switch to gold, you would be propping up a $12 trillion currency. And if you switch to Bitcoin, you would be propping up a less than $1 trillion currency. So if people were rational, I don't think they are, by the way. Luckily for us, 98% of them aren't, because you couldn't be in the top 2% if everybody else was as smarter than you, could you? Right? So I guess they're not really totally rational, but if you were rational, the obvious thing to do if you're an export country is you start exporting in Bitcoin, and then you sweep your cash flows into Bitcoin, and then you probably make like $500 billion or $1 trillion because you did that. If you're the first mover, who will do that? Well, I mean, why wouldn't you do that? By the way, why hasn't Apple bought $20 billion of Bitcoin and made $100 billion overnight yet? The answer is they're afraid, and they have political constraints. They're afraid of their shareholders. The accounting makes it ugly. So, you wonder, why don't they just bend over and make $1 trillion? Remember when I tweeted to Elon, I said, I didn't say buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. I said buy 10 billion worth of Bitcoin, and then issue $10 billion of converts and buy 10 billion more, and you make 100 billion, and then all the S&P follows you and you make $1 trillion.
Michael Saylor also shares his thoughts about Janet Yellen and her remarks about cryptocurrency regulations.
I think it's an iconic 97 seconds, actually. I mean, it's very emblematic of what's been going on over the past few years. I mean, if I were to parse the real significant high points of that, you have Andrew, who represents mainstream media, stating, I can't get through an interview without talking about this. Roll the clock back 2 or 3 years ago, I don't think that was true. So that's the mainstream media embracing the Reformation. Then you have Janet saying, then you have Andrew saying, a nation state has considered adopting Bitcoin as a technology for payments. I think that's a second iconic thing. I think when she says lots of Americans have this as part of their investment strategy, that's a third iconic event. When she says we got to regulate it responsibly, that's nothing more than what you would expect any adult working in an administration to say. You would say the same thing if I put you in charge of something. I got to handle it responsibly. And then the final statement, and Andrew kind of cuts her off slightly, where she says, we're going to create an environment where innovation can continue, right? Was a pretty big deal. In essence, it's the White House, the most powerful government in the world, embracing Bitcoin and also endorsing the crypto reformation. We're really living through a reformation right now, and you're watching history being made right in front of your eyes. One day people will look back at this 30 years from now and say, this is when the entire inversion of the monetary order took place, and more than the monetary order, right? It transcends even any one industry. I think if you roll the clock back to the entry of the Biden administration, the seminal events in the industry were Biden being elected. Biden has been very constructive with regard to innovation. If you look at the financial regulators that came in with the Biden administration, including Janet Yellen and Gary Gensler and the like, They're very informed, very constructive. If you actually, you could say this was a surprise, but if you looked at the written testimony that Janet Yellen gave while she was being vetted by Congress, while they were deciding on her appointment, she said pretty much the same words that she just said to Andrew in that 1 minute clip. She said, we need to responsibly regulate it, and this is a force for innovation and good and progress. And I think Gensler has said the same thing, and I think the other administrators, the other regulators have said the same thing. So I agree. I agree with the observation. Last week was a massive milestone. But if you were surprised by last week, you weren't paying attention for the past year and a half, because all of the indicators that the political system, the White House, Congress, and the Senate are pro-crypto and pro-Bitcoin in specific. All of those things have been there since the election. And I'd say what we saw last week was the President of the United States directing 18 government agencies to figure out how to embrace this new revolution, and reminding everybody that there are 40 million Americans that are pro-crypto and pro-Bitcoin, and there's nobody anti, right? So the only, even in the Senate, Elizabeth Warren doesn't represent her own party or the opposition party view, right? Mm-hmm. She is sort of a party of one.
Coming back to MicroStrategy, it is continuing to build holdings in Bitcoin, with a unit of the enterprise software company taking out a $205 million loan to buy more of the digital currency. The subsidiary reached an agreement for a term loan with Silvergate Bank, a crypto leader run by Silvergate Capital. The loan marked the first time the company has borrowed to make Bitcoin purchases. The loan was collateralized with $820 million in Bitcoin, and it will mature in March 2025, according to a Securities and Exchange Commission filing. Talking about it, Saylor said that the loan gives MicroStrategy an opportunity to further its position as the public company with the largest Bitcoin investment, and that using the cryptocurrency as a collateral on the loan, a first for the company, would allow it to further execute against its Bitcoin strategy. So what are your thoughts about MicroStrategy's $205 million loan to buy more Bitcoin? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.